And we don't have quorum.
Come around the breezeway, yeah.
What?
We have no quorum.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't leave those doors. Okay.
Vanessa Navarrete.
That's at 6 o'clock on the roll call.
Is it gonna do roll call? Matt Mashaw? Joy Evelyn here. Henry Munoz?
Okay.
We do have a quorum, and it just popped up.
Mike Gutierrez?
Here.
Sherry Victori?
Here.
David Gunn? Jesse Garcia?
Here.
So we have a quorum, so we can have our meeting. Call for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States of America.
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll do the invocation. Thank you, Lord, for letting us have this meeting and for helping us through COVID. It's been a tough road to hoe. And help us make our town better and keep everybody safe and sound when they go home tonight. Amen. Amen. Do I hear approval for the meetings for last in March? Or no, February. The approval for the meetings of planning and zoning on February 4th. I think it should say March.
March 4th on the agenda.
I got. Okay. So do I hear approval or a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the March 4th meeting.
Okay, it's been a motion made by Sherry and approved by Hank, seconded by Hank to approve the minutes for our meeting on March 4th. Okay, under new business, public hearing, discussion and possible approval of resolution 2021-03. A resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Superior recommending to adopt Town Code Article 12-3-4 exemptions for a single-family residential dwellings and manufactured mobile homes.
Okay, this extends all the exemptions for building codes so that if you have a project that's less than $1,500, you do not have to get a permit. If it is something that requires a permit for later utility access, you can get that just by paying for the inspection. It consolidates a bunch of other, just some of these are standard exemptions from other areas in the code. Some are extensions of basic limits, like the $1,500 limit. Most of them are fairly self-explanatory, and the intent is to exempt most regular repairs, minor repairs, so they don't require a permit. The standard exemptions that are already in the code for a less than 200 square foot building and 120 square foot extension are from previous code adoptions that the council, that the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council adopted. We've also worked with the contractor. We are taking a similar approach to what the county uses, and we will be offering 1 day a week for inspections, a scheduled day. If you come up during the scheduled day, you won't pay any trip charges. It takes the cost of a inspection from $265 to $110. So that should significantly decrease the cost of the permits. So we're attempting to streamline and decrease costs as much as we reasonably can. If you require a special permit, say you're doing a concrete pour and you have to have an inspection that day, you can still call for a special permit if you pay the road charge. If you schedule your project for the regular weekly inspection, then you don't pay any road charges, and it's about a third or a little more than a third of the cost.
John?
This is a public hearing, so we do have to open it up sometime for public. Go ahead.
Yeah, Henry Munoz kicking in at 604. I've been on.
What was that?
Henry Munoz checking in at 604.
Oh, okay. The clerk is noting that on the agenda, on the minutes.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the? Sure, go ahead.
Just so that, just because this came from your little summary right there, the question I have, you talked about the inspections and the criteria when they get done, when you pay. Do you have, or should we include a schedule of costs and those type of things within this, what we're actually addressing today? I mean, because the people will show up and they say, well, okay, I can see that my project doesn't exceed $1,500. Okay, that's fine, but if we have to go through the permitting process and talking about these inspections, I think there should be a schedule to outline that. Otherwise, that puts more burden on the staff to answer questions that should be outlined immediately up front. It may be an attachment or a summary of scheduled costs, so that and inspections of when those will or will not occur.
We have
and who to call.
Yeah, we've just completed that the work with the vendor today to get those new fees set up. So it is it wasn't done in time for any posting requirements for this meeting. So we will put that on the next agenda to clarify that issue. Because it's an administrative thing, we've already reduced 4 permits that were in front of us to the new fees. We've already implemented it, so it's not an increase. So it's an alliance with the contract. So as long as everyone is willing to schedule a 1 day a week, just like we did with Pinal County, we can get the cost down significantly.
Yeah. I think more important for me, and just for the people that are going to get involved in this, I just want to be able to find fee schedules. If I go online or if I look at this document, and I know you don't have it now, but we need to really make sure we have that.
Absolutely. We also have a release for the paper and for Facebook, and we're going to be putting it out there. There is a manual online, but this is one of those areas that we want to clarify, so it will be in front of the P&Z Commission next month.
Were you done with your summary?
I am.
Are you open to more questions? Yes.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I guess this is kind of just for the record on number 2. Of course, non-residential, this does not apply to commercial, correct?
This does not apply to commercial, no.
Okay. And the other one I have, what was the other one I had?
You said you have another
I just
question?
want to, yeah, I'm looking through my notes here. Let's see, on the, let's see, under 14, item 14, that says with concrete block, so yada, yada, yada. And there's A, B, C, actually, it's actually 16. Concrete walkway, not invited, right away, patios and slabs. Is right away the same as an easement?
Yeah, well, the easements are not the same. An easement, you can build something in an easement. The problem you have with that is if the utility company or the person who has the granted easement wants access, they have the right to destroy whatever you put in there. So if you build a sidewalk in an easement and there's a buried utility line in there, they can cut up your concrete, dig up their line and fix it, and they do not have to pay to replace it. So the easement is technically still your property, but you've given another entity right of access to it.
Okay, so what you're referring to here is not necessarily a utility easement. A utility easement and town right of way are two different things.
Yes, town right of way is a road, street, alley, sidewalk.
Okay. Anything else here?
Is that it?
Yeah, that's all I can have right now.
Any member of the public want to address this? Please come to the podium.
Is this open for the public?
This is a public hearing, yeah.
Okay, this is a public hearing.
Okay, the main thing that I see is I have a question about the $1,500. If any of these things, one going up under B, if any of those cost more than $1,500, are you going to have to pay a permit?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, up till now, a single family, well, even a commercial building, single family residence, we didn't pay permits for roofs. If we were
For
just.
roof, oh, no, I misunderstood your question. No, that is just one of the exemptions. If you have a roof, you do not have to get a permit to put your roof on as long as you're not doing structural. If you're doing it doesn't matter if you're doing a patio, if it's a $5,000 patio, as long as it's a patio, it meets this other exemption. It has to meet one of the exemptions.
Okay, but it does say that for non-residential uses, a permit is required regardless of the dollar value.
Yes, for commercial, that's non-residential.
Okay, what do you call multifamily?
That's residential, it's multifamily residential.
Okay, because it says single family.
Yeah, well, it would still probably need a permit. Lana would be more expert on that, but I believe so. It needs a permit for anything that is not a single family residential.
So is a duplex or an small apartment building
Yes,
is what?
you need a permit to do construction on that, yes. But, and it's under the standard exemptions for the code as well. So if you're doing a roof, you can still do a roof, whether it's single family or not, as long as you're not affecting structural issues.
As
You
long
can still
as
paint. Huh? As long as you're not doing structural repairs. If you are, if you're doing a roof and it doesn't, and you don't have to reskin the plywood underneath it, if you're just putting a new layer of asphalt shingles, that does not require a permit.
Okay, you never know if there's wood that has to be replaced.
Right, but as long as it's not a structural issue, it doesn't have to need a permit.
Okay, for multifamily or single family.
Yes, that's a standard
So
code
it should be
exemption.
changed in here.
That's covered under another standard exemption. This is just for single family residential, and that is part of one of the standard exemptions for reskinning a roof.
Okay.
This is
So
just for
everything in this exemption list is for single family and multifamily.
It's for single family homes and for mobile homes.
Okay, what about multifamily? Where do the exemptions?
Those are standard code exemptions. They're already written into the code elsewhere. These are extending a lot more exemptions for single family residential. So if you're working on your own home and you want to repair it, this exemption list covers that. It doesn't cover if you are a owner of an apartment complex and you want to do something. That's a separate set of exemptions.
Where do you find those?
It's
International Building Code 2018.
Can you give me the article?
Yes. You need it right now?
You can email it to me if you want. Okay, but still, even commercial buildings now, you're saying they have to buy a permit to put shingles on, correct?
Mayor, make sure I'm muted, I'm not sure I am.
no.
So the call to
That's not what it says.
Yes, but this doesn't apply to commercial.
It says here, for non-residential uses, a permit is required regardless of the dollar value.
Right. But it doesn't get rid of all the other exemptions that are under the code, which are part of the standard exemption for reskinning. If you're putting new shingles on your roof, it's covered under another exemption in the standard building code. It doesn't need a specific item. This just groups them all together for residential, so that it's very clear for residential. If you're working on your own home, you don't need to get a permit for most of these things.
Well, I don't know how you can put non-residential is required and you don't put a list in here.
Tom, we need to time out here. If you're not talking, mute your phone. We get a lot of feedback.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
He's getting feedback.
I go, if people are not talking, please mute your phone.
Yeah, everyone on the phone, please mute unless you're actually talking so that we don't get feedback for the people who are on the phone.
Okay, I just think it's very unclear what the exemption are for everything.
Okay?
Multifamily residential, they require extra inspection, which is a fire code comes into this, because multifamily residential could be apartments, condominiums, other units that you're gonna rent, so that becomes, as a commercial, considered, and that's why this is only for single family residential, non-residential, commercial, business, industrial, those require permits, no matter what. This is only for single residential because the fire code, we are trying not to be so strict with the fire code, 2018 fire code book, international.
Okay. Next.
Hi, my name's Kim Brandon.
If Lana's gonna talk, she's gonna have to get closer to whatever you're using there, because it's hard to hear her.
If she speaks again, she'll come up to the mic.
My name's Kim Brandon, and first of all, I just absolutely love it here. And I love the people here. So I just had a few questions to clarify for me. I've been trying to read all of the antique permits and codes and all the things of Superior. I understand you're going to be making some changes and stuff like that, which is going to affect all of us, including myself and my family. So one of the questions I have would be, I have a lot of family and friends that are buying and purchasing up here asking about the RV situation. And that they're being told now that they can't have them, now they have to have permits. What if they had a garage for the RV?
It's always been allowed to garage. We recently extended where it's allowed to be stored. You can store it anywhere in the front setback, not just behind your house. You can only live in it temporarily for 2 weeks with a permit, or if you're building your house or something like that, you can get a longer permit.
But it can be stored without a permit?
Yeah, it doesn't require a permit to store, as long as you're within the front setback of your house. And usually on most zoning areas, it's 20 or 25 feet that it has to be back from the street edge.
Okay. The second question is...
To clarify that, not on empty lot. You cannot place RV on empty lot, only during the construction.
You'll have to come up to the mic.
During the construction, I understand that.
I'll repeat it. She just said that you can't store an RV on a lot during I can't store an RV on an empty lot.
Correct.
But if you have a building permit on it and you're building a house there, you can, as long as you have an active building permit.
Okay. The other question would be, are you guys using a consulting firm out of Santan? Is that something that I'm hearing? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify everything I'm hearing around town and trying to figure out what's going on
Yes.
here.
We did an RFQ, because we're government. We asked for proposals for people to take on the bidding. We got 2 proposals. Both of them were out of the valley. No one local put in for the RFQ. So we end up having to pay road time for them to come in. To be clear also, another rumor I hear a lot on the street is that the town chose to take over its own permits, which is incorrect. The county told us that they would no longer renew our IGA, and that we had to develop our own building code. We have no choice but to take this on. And because we're much smaller and we don't have the economics of scale, a lot of the things that they can do with 1 inspector for 1,000 inspections, we have to do 1 inspector for 10 inspections. So the cost per capita goes up. We're doing our best to minimize that. The town's going to eat some more cost on this. We're eating all the travel time and the extra hours for them to get here, so that it's less for the individual. Unless you have some special inspection and you want them here tomorrow, you're welcome to pay the road time.
Okay. Also, do you have an up-to-date on what is allowed to be built on a lot? What do you allow? I've been told everything that they don't allow. A so-called tiny home, yes, they do allow them, as long as it's not on wheels, this and that, Do you have something that's more update on your website?
We can provide more information on that, but it is to a certain extent set by a zoning code, which is 150 pages long. So it depends on what neighborhood you want to build in, what's allowed in that neighborhood,
okay,
what type of thing you're building, and it has to be on a case-per-case basis. Like,
okay,
for instance, a tiny home on wheels isn't considered a home, it's considered an RV.
Right.
So the RV code applies.
Right.
An RV code, or a tiny home that is on a foundation, is considered a manufactured home, and the manufactured home applies. So
okay,
if you build it from scratch, it's a regular stick home.
Okay.
All of those have different rules.
All right, last question. I won't drive you crazy. Something that concerns me that was brought to my attention is I come from Fountain Hills, and this is not Fountain Hills. And I was told that this town is trying to emulate Fountain Hills, and that was like a shocker to me, because I was like, wow. I mean, obviously it's not Fountain Hills. People come here because it's not Fountain Hills, and you guys have such a beautiful uniqueness about you here. Is that something that you're trying to do?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. That's all I need to hear.
The source of that rumor is that the original zoning book that whoever was in charge in 2001 adopted was based on one out of Fountain Hills, and they used the same consultants.
Okay.
We've revised it extensively since then. We've tried to simplify it, cut it down. And we don't always get the choice of the books we're handed, but we did do an attempt to simplify it in 2017. That took 6 months and lots of public hearings like this one and lots of input. So it is by its nature as a code book, a book of compromise.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for opening up in prayer.
Hey, Doug, the page,
Yes.
for clarification for the previous caller that was asking the question regarding the RV, if you be, again, because this becomes a big issue, more specific, if you have an RV and you want to park it on your residence, where can you park it and how far back does it have to be? Because I think sometimes that's very confusing. So just focus, if I have an RV and I want to park it on either side of my house, how far back does it have to be so you're not in trouble?
That is, as a general thing, it's 20 feet from the front lot line. It can be beside your house, it can be behind your house. As long as it's out of the front setback, it's generally allowed in our code.
But it also has to be a
Expand on that setback for the caller. When you say setback, what does that really mean to somebody?
That means there has to be a primary residence on there, and the front setback is the distance your house has to be back from the lot line. And that is set in the zoning code, and it's different for every zoning district. So there's not one rule I can tell you where that's the same everywhere. The Planning and Zoning Commission lightened that up. Previously, you could only park an RV past the front line of your house and back. They decided that was too restrictive, and so you have extended it so that you can park it up to the front setback.
So basically, I can park it in my driveway.
You can park it in your driveway as long as it's back 20 feet from the lot line.
Okay. I got another question regarding the exemptions on the roofing, re-roofing, and I've had a note here. And you talked, it doesn't require structural changes. I'm not sure if this is the case forever, but just especially in some of the older homes, if someone's going to put a solar panel on their roof and it requires a reinforcement of the rafters, does that require a permit?
Yes, that's a structural change. And that would require a permit anyway. It's an electrical, it requires a lot of inspections for a solar panel installation.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
My name's Deborah Kay. I had remodeled a building on Main Street. My sister also remodeled the house. So we've been through the permitting and the zoning and everything in previous. I know a lot of people in town and people that are moving in town trying to buy properties. And it's really not a very good situation. It's really deterring people from moving here and buying properties because of the permitting process and the fees that it takes to get a permit to even do anything here. So I know that the town, this was kind of thrown at the town. It wasn't something that you guys chose to do. So what I have come up with is a plan, and I have over 100 signatures already to get a petition to go to Pinal County. We pay taxes in Pinal County, and we want them to handle our permitting for us.
And I would absolutely agree with you. I think that's an excellent notion. I think that would be very helpful for us. We have approached our county supervisor about it. He has promised to elevate it to the county manager. We've met with the county manager. He has promised a proposal to take it back over. It's only been a week and a half. Hopefully we will see that soon. But any support you can give us on that, I appreciate.
Well, I came to the town to let you know that we're ready to do that. And whatever we need to do to get Pinal County back to doing our permitting, we're willing to do that. So right now I have over 100 signatures.
I really appreciate that, and it's very much what we want, is for them to come back. One of the things that everybody should be aware of is that the rate structure we adopted is the one that Pinal County is in the process of adopting. So their rates are going to be very similar to ours going forward. The difference is because they have enough inspectors, they spread that cost, the inspections are much cheaper. So hopefully they will take us back, but we're still going to continue to work that, and hopefully it will get done. And we do appreciate it, and I'd love for you to submit that. We will be happy to tell you who it needs to go to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Lana, I have, because she said it off speaker, I want to make sure I repeat it. We have also approached Florence and Apache Junction about taking us on. Both have indicated that they can't do it, they can't consider it until next budget year. We will continue to try to look for solutions for this. There is a bit of a lack of inspectors in Arizona, so the companies that are doing that are charging a premium. Willdan does it as well, and they are hiring up. They are currently providing inspection services for the city of Tucson, so they've hired just about every freelance inspector around. So it's getting hard to find these people. Hopefully we'll convince the municipality to take us on with Pinal County.
Well, God will know this is not going to get better, it's going to get worse in the next 5 years. between now and about 4 years. So we're going to be in deep straits if we can't make a relationship with the county.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have hope for that. There is a new county manager. The previous county manager focused a lot of attention on Santan and the valley. And they were the reason they told us they dropped us is it was too much windshield time to come to Superior.
Same amount.
Right.
Same amount.
Hi, my name is Debbie Alden. As a lot of you know, I have a strip of dilapidated homes on Santa Rita, and I went into that whole project full bore with the county and all permits. I followed everything to the T. And my concern is that, and I know there's a lot of costs here if we can't go back to Pinell County, but I never paid for an inspection. I never paid, not for one. I mean, I had insulation, I had sheetrock, I had, oh, you guys know what I went through. And now I appreciate that you came down on some costs, but our taxes are paying for somebody to be employed to come and inspect, and our fees for the permits. I don't understand. I can understand if you had a special and you needed something done on not the day that you are gonna come inspect. I understand that, but I think that's really uncalled for. I just want to put it out there. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone else wants to speak? Anyone? All right. So we close the public hearing and ask for a vote
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. We're gonna have a vote
on the exemption resolution. New business. Okay.
Under new business right down here?
Yeah, the first new business item. Not the draft, you're in the minutes.
Hang on, you guys.
You took that one.
Okay, you're gonna have a vote. Public hearing, discussion possible, approval of resolution 2021-03. A resolution of planning and zoning commission on the town of Superior recommendation to adopt the town code article 12-3-4 exemptions for single-family residential dwelling and manufactured/mobile homes. So,
Do we have a motion?
do we have a motion? Hank?
This is Hank, so moved.
Okay, Hank made a motion to vote on it. Do I have a second?
Second by Henry Munoz.
Okay, it's seconded by Henry. I guess we'll go through it. Henry, how do you vote?
Yes, we approve.
Okay. Hank?
Aye.
Okay. Sherry?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
And I vote. David? This is yours?
No.
Okay. It carries by 5 votes. Oh, I vote yes, so it carries by 6.
All right, we just have another new business item with a conditional use permit.
have a conditional, public hearing, discussion possible approval of a conditional use permit request from Tiffany Rowell to allow 8 residents for the assisted living home. I'll turn that one over to Paul.
Okay, this isn't allowed use in the neighborhood, but it requires a conditional use for anything over 6. So Tiffany is just asking for a conditional use permit to be allowed to have 8 residents in this home. Do you want to address the commission?
Sure. This is Tiffany Rao, and I am the one that's requesting the conditional use permit. As you all probably are aware, the current code allows for 6, as Todd said. The state of Arizona's health department is the organization that monitors assisted living homes. They do your inspections every year. They give you your license to operate, and they allow 10 beds in the state of Arizona under the same license that I will be applying for. So I'm asking for 8, simply because I don't feel the home has enough space for 10 from a caregiver's point of view or from a resident's point of view. So you have, Lana made you that plot map there that shows the plot view of the property and the proposed addition that I will need to have the 2 extra beds. That's basically the extent of the conditional use permit. If you have any questions, I'm definitely happy to. We all know the need of an assisted living here. In fact, I know I got them together late to get them to you, but I have pretty good stack just within the last week of letters from residents, expressing the need. A lot of them are stories of families that had to go out of town to place their loved one. So wanted to do this for a long time. This opportunity came up thanks to Sue for this particular home, and this is the way I can get started at least, and hopefully expand to a different location in the future. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Are there any
Hey,
questions?
Tiffany, this is Hank. I have a few questions. Let's just start off with, on your site plan, is this something you put together or did someone else?
We actually, I use the services of the town through Lana, and Lana, it had already had a recorded survey on that property, so we went from that, and I employed Lana Services to do the plot map.
Hank?
Okay.
Hank,
Hank,
to answer your question, Tiffany had a recorded map, survey map, with the exact property line. From those exact property line, the plot plan is drawn, shows the setback lines. Also, Tiffany perhaps forgot to mention, all the fire code inspector, fire marshal requirements for the site plan is being fulfilled. It shows on the site plan. So she, for specific for this house, all the setbacks and the property line, which is, you will see on the east side is 5-foot property line will be pushed. Sue is selling those 5 feet land, right? Correct? That's square footage in order for the fire, to fulfill the fire code.
All right, thank you, Lana.
I think there was another part of your question there, Hank.
Go ahead, Hank.
yeah, just, I'm looking at the plot and I actually went on, to the survey map and Google Maps to take a look at this from a aerial view. And then on the west side of the property line, it says you're increasing so you're going from an existing line and you're from the existing property line and moving the fence line further west. Are you encroaching into the neighbor's property by doing that?
Well, I am, but thankfully Sue Anderson also owns that property. And so we have made an agreement that, and I have a letter from her as well, that the agreement is, provided I am able to use this home for an assisted living, that she's
No,
basically.
I'm actually referring to the extending moving the proposed property line. You're basically, is she deeding the additional property over to you?
Yes,
Or is it, how does that work? Because to me, we may be opening up a can of worms here because you're combining part of another lot. And so the plot is going to be not correct. They just refer to the website for right now.
Okay, the
That would be my concern.
Okay, no, and then that's a valid concern, I appreciate the question. So currently the way the lot line is, part of that west side property
Tiffany,
line.
I can't hear you, Tiffany. Be closer to the mic.
Maybe that's the
You
problem.
have a small mic on your table there?
Oh, it's this one?
Yes, it's right there.
Got it, sorry, is that
That's
better,
okay.
Hank? Hank?
You were better the first time. Go ahead.
You can just hold it up closer to you, you just haven't heard
Is it on? Did I accidentally turn it off?
No, it's on.
Okay, Hank, so the current property line does sit up right to the back side of the house as it sits now. Thankfully, Sue Anderson owns the property to the west of this house as well. And we have made an agreement, her and I do have it in writing, that upon the approval that I can use this house for an assisted living, she will gift me, and we will do it legally, it'll be recorded, it'll be, surveyed out where that 5 feet west will be gifted to me and included in the 422 Lafayette property.
That would require a lot combined split with Pinal County GIS. It's done all the time. As long as the new lot conforms to zoning, which Lon has reviewed, it's within their right to do that.
Right.
Are we putting the cart before the horse on this?
Well, I don't believe so because
I'm asking the town. I'm asking the town.
And the conditional use permit could stipulate that the lot combined split is required for the approval. And it's the way I understand it, that she needs the conditional use permit before she can make the purchase. So it's not like they own the property now. So
well, I own 422 Lafayette.
Okay.
But I do not.
I totally understand that. All I'm addressing here is the encroachment on the property, and I understand what you're saying about the property owner. All I'm saying is that if we're not putting the cart before the horse, so if it's a condition to deed or that portion of the lot, that's fine, because you need that to do that. So that's what I'm saying. So we would expect, I guess, to have that done within relatively, I don't know, what would be the time frame that we require on that part?
Can I come at it with you, Hank, at a different point of view? In order for me.
Well, no, because it's actually, I understand that in order for you to do that, you need to go through what do you call it, what you're requesting. I understand that.
No,
What I'm saying to the town.
Well, Hank, to clarify that question, this is a request and requirement of the fire marshal for access and for egress. So it's a requirement for her to get her permit in order to run her facility. Even if the conditional use permit's granted, she'll still need a business license to operate that. That requires a fire marshal inspection, and the fire marshal is required egress. So
that was the point of view. I can't even apply for a state license without a fire marshal's signature and without the town's approval.
And
so,
the fire marshal is on the line. Mr. Lane, do you want to address that?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Excellent, yeah. This is Dallas Lane, Superior Fire Department. And just like to say that we've been working with Tiffany on this project for about 6 months, trying to support her and assist her in making this happen. And fire department supports this project as being in the best interest of the residents of the town and the families of the town. And this is a service that is necessary in the town, as she said. So we've worked diligently with her to help find a way to create this. The situation that we have with this house is that under the current boundaries, the rear of the house is right on the property line, and therefore there's no emergency exiting out of the back of the house. And in order to put residents in there who are older folks and would have limited ability to assist themselves in an emergency to get out, we need a secondary exit out the back of the house in order to get those people out or perform a rescue should there be an emergency. So what we need is the fire department access to the rear of the house, and that's what we've been asking for and trying to work out with Tiffany how to accomplish. And so the back of the house, the west side, is up against a neighbor's driveway. So the physical exit is there. She's willing to install a second exit, a doorway out of the back of the house, and the people will be able to exit into the driveway. It's just a question of whose property are they exiting onto, kind of thing. So that's what the concern has been, that we just need to be able to get these folks out of the house if there's a fire, there's an emergency. And the back of the house historically is right on the lot line, and that prohibits an emergency exit out the back of the house.
Okay, thanks again, I appreciate that. But actually, I understand that's how that requirement would work, but I'm more concerned about, setting precedents. And I mean, we totally need this. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. But when I see on the drawing, you say proposed property line, existing, and then proposed property line, all I'm saying is at some point, because this is going to be a what you call it, an exemption. So it would, instead of saying proposed and from the existing to the proposed property line, it should be the proposed exemption property line, because at some point, what I'm hearing, because if this goes through, this facility is going to be long-term. So my understanding from Tiffany is that extra 5 feet is going to be deeded over to that particular property. Is that true or not true?
Yes, that was the plan that I wanted to do. I wanted to actually be deeded and included in the 422 Moffett property.
And just to let the Planning and Zoning Commission know here, because you're not in the room, you can't see. Sue Anderson is here. She's the adjacent property owner, and she's nodding her head whenever Tiffany says she's going to transfer the property. She does have that in writing, and my suggestion to the Planning and Zoning Commission, if this is a concern, is that you place a stipulation on the conditional use permit that property has to be transferred before the use is actually implemented.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, the other question I have is that as you look at the plot between the house on Market Street, is that, and the fire chief may be on here, the house already is right on the street. And if we're moving a fence line, are we encroaching onto Market Street? So this says the existing property line includes most of Market, and I looked on the parcel from Pinal County, and Market there's the opposite quite a bit from the house, and maybe the house is built in the wrong spot.
Well,
So
I would caution you.
If we're moving the fence line further, in this case, further south, is that going to encroach on Market Street in the right of way of Market Street?
I would have one caution for you. If you look on the Pinal County website and you try to line up the lines, they don't line up. They don't line up for anywhere.
No, I realize that. But
so if you look at this survey, it does have. If you look at this survey, it does show it's encroaching on the edge of pavement by about a foot. That is something that we can do with a right-of-way permit. If you also look at the maps for this area, I don't believe these maps are actually platted, or these roads are actually platted.
This question, it's exactly coming up. She has also applied for variance permit for setbacks, and that's exactly will be discussed by the Board of Adjustment.
So that'll be a council decision.
Yes.
And the Board of Adjustment for the town of Superior is the Superior Town Council. They will adjourn from council and then enter into a Board of Adjustment meeting and make that decision in their regular meeting.
This is not for planning and zoning, this question. Her question is for planning and zoning, specifically from 6 to 8 people. That's totally different topic. It's for Board of Adjustment. And we already we will bring that in.
Well, I would tend to disagree with you, because if that was only the case, the town would not be providing us with a site plan. If that was the case, we shouldn't even be looking at the site plan. So, but I understand that this was surveyed, and I'm just asking a question in regards to the survey and encroachment to Moffett Street. That's all I'm asking. And from planning and zoning, that's probably our fiduciary responsibility to ask those kind of questions. And you know, that's what we do, right?
Yes, and I'll to address that. Yes, it'll have a minor encroachment in the pavement. That will be dealt with at the next meeting. It's not a major encroachment, and again, those streets. If you look at the survey the survey-based map you've been provided, it has sufficient width for that street for it to remain functional as a street. Also, this has still got to go through the variance and everything else before it's approved, and that's going to address those issues. The main issue that's in front of you now is whether or not the proposed use of a senior assisted living facility is acceptable.
Also, to answer your question, the site plan shows specifically giving to the conditional use permit to specify the requirements of fire marshal, to show the property line, to show the requirements, and to show the future use. For easier to understand, that's only why the site plan was submitted. Otherwise, it's very hard to explain by fire marshal. There is on the east side, there is on the north side. You look at the plan, you see the 30 feet diameter circle that shows the gathering area for fire marshal requirements. Then shows the existing property line on the west side and shows the proposed property line 5 foot that will be given by Sue for this parcel. That's why we're showing the site plan is submitted, so it's easier to see.
And I believe as well, the off-street parking was important to show for it to go to the 6 bed to the 8 bed. But Hank, when I go out and measure from that fence that we're proposing to move about 1.5 feet, I'm not into the pavement, but there is kind of a mound of dirt there that the previous, not Sue, but the previous owner had put up apparently to block water drainage or something. So I'm not showing where that fence is going to encroach onto the pavement at all.
Well, first of all, a drawing like this is done very well, and it's not hard to understand. Good drawings like this just generate questions. So this drawing is not very hard to understand. So let's get that straight. Whoever put this together did a very decent job. And the reason I'm asking about that south fencing is because Moffett Street, it's kind of a bend right there. And if it doesn't present a risk of traffic, going into the house, or maybe the fence line will help be a barrier to that, because you're going to add a room to there that's, I just hope it doesn't create a possible, somebody coming around that corner and run through your fence and going right into the house.
Yeah, I understand that.
And also too, the reason I ask these type of questions, because when people come to me as being on the commission, they're always asking me why. And I'm just looking for uniformity. It has to be uniform across the board. So if things like this are not even challenged from the P&Z, then why do we even have P&Z? It's up to the P&Z to ask these types of questions, because we're the ones that are walking on the street and asking, well, why does Joe have this? You did this over here on Moffett, but you're not allowing me to do this. So I'm just making sure that we're not establishing any precedent here that's gonna, cause grief for the town and planning and zoning and the town council. That's all.
And I would agree with you, Hank, definitely that reviewing it from all angles is important, and I would never discourage that. The comment I make about it being uniform, this isn't a specifically noted allowed use through conditional use permit. So it is allowed in code with Planning and Zoning Commission approval. So this is within the standards that are set out in our code. So this isn't anything abnormal. This isn't anything that's a special case. This is a specific exemption that's allowed in the code that we are following to the letter.
And maybe if I can make a couple more comments, and I'm happy to take more questions, but a 6-bed, my goal is to serve as many local residents as possible, okay? A 6-bed home, I'm planning on accepting the state Medicaid system, which is, we call it All-Tex, right? Arizona Long-Term Care. And they set the price, you don't set the price that they pay, okay? And for a 6-bed, the last I heard, last class I went to, and I don't mind giving you the numbers, but it's a little under $2,000 a bed, okay? That's all All-Tex will pay, no matter the level of care, no matter if it's supervisory, personal, or directed. That's the cost. So if you want to, do the quick math, I'd like to pay more than minimum wage, but let's say, my total cost with taxes is $15 an hour. I think somewhere I'm already looking at $10,800 just in payroll costs. Okay, and these homes have a huge expense in insurance because of the liability, people fall, workman's comp is higher because of the risk of caregivers, because we lift and shower and so all of the insurances are a little bit higher. So to be quite frank with you, a 6-bed private pay only, yeah, you could probably make it a viable business and let it last, but I want to take All-Tex. I don't mind taking private pay too. I'm not saying that, but I do want to work with All-Tex, okay? Because there's a lot of our local residents, I care for them in their home every day. They cannot afford to pay for assisted living on their own, so they would have to go to All-Tex, and I would like to be able to accept them in the home. So that extra 2 beds would give a little bit of cushion there because, excuse me, your beds aren't always full. People pass, and it's something within assisted living. It just seems like there's always 2 or 3 that pass right close to each other. So you have oftentimes beds that are empty. So I don't feel that a 6-bed facility anywhere in Superior, even with the perfect plot, is viable financially. And my goal is to be able to have it and let it continue. I don't want to be shutting down in 2 years because I can't afford it, okay? I want it to work. So I feel that the 2 beds is absolutely necessary. 2 extra beds.
Well, Tiffany, I do, you know what, like I said earlier, this is something unique, and I appreciate the passion you have for this. I appreciate the business model that you just outlined for us. But as planning and zoning, we don't make decisions on a business model. We make decisions based on zoning issues and planning issues. That's what all these questions are about. If your business model that works for you and it gets approved, that's between you and your business. But as P&Z, we make decisions based on what we see before us, and to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So my concern just to make sure we ask the question. So somewhere down the road, if someone comes up and says, "Well, what happened here?" we'll have a very clear understanding. So my question to Todd is going to be this: are we voting, are we gonna take a vote just to go from 6 to 8? Are we voting on that, on the additional personnel and the construction of that room and, the site plan? What are we doing? Are we doing all those on this vote coming
The
up?
item in front of you is a conditional use permit to allow to switch from 6 to 8. That does require a site plan to be submitted as a part of it. So this site plan is a requirement of the code in order to be considered. So, but all you're considering right now is whether or not you will allow a change from the 6 maximum to 8 maximum.
Thank you.
With the stipulation on the property.
If you so choose to put a stipulation on that you want to make sure that that there's proper access and that before the CUP is issued, that they have addressed the access issues by acquiring the property next door, you can do that. You can put the stipulation you feel is important for safety on there. It will probably, it's got a lot of steps to go through before it gets to final construction. They do still have to get building permits. They do have to get all the other things that are required in the code. But this allows them to know that their proposed use is in fact possible. And that's always the first step. Is it feasible?
No, what any stipulation actually brings it to the attention of the council, and the council can act or not act on those stipulations. So that's why indeed, that's why I would bring it up, or others may bring it up.
Okay, and that is absolutely correct, and thank you for raising that issue. This is a public hearing, and I don't think we've heard from anyone from the public, and there are still people in the room, so I'd like to encourage anybody who wants to address the commission to please come to the podium.
Hey, Todd? Todd?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question before we go to the public. Did we conduct any type of neighborhood survey to see how the residents in the surrounding areas felt about this?
Tiffany has addressed that. We did the notification requirements, so.
Apart from what we've talked about in the code, it's not required for an actual.
Yeah, I'm just asking, because a lot of times you have people, we approve something and then they say, hey, this happened before, and Todd knows this happened before, to where we get the neighborhood survey to see what the residents feel about it. And, it's a great plan. Don't get me wrong. We need something like this. But, it depends a lot on your neighbors in the area, how they're going to be affected and how they feel for the project itself.
Tiffany, is that you have 18 letters, you said?
I have several, but they're not from that neighborhood now. So I understand what you're saying, sir. I think I didn't think about that primarily because I can open a 6-bed without appearing before planning and zoning at all. So I didn't even really think about, that the community or the neighborhood would be concerned about 2 more beds.
Yeah, but my point is that, when something happens in my neighborhood, I'd sure like to know and hear about it, to voice my opinion so that I can be heard. And I think the neighbors in the area, and it's not that hard to do a survey, just walk and talk and ask and get people's opinion, They're going to tell you yes or no, That's all I'm asking. Because a lot of times, I hate going to town, somebody's going to hit me up and say, hey, Henry, how did you approve this? They didn't even ask me about it. I didn't even know it was coming. But I feel that everybody, even yourself, if something's happening in your neighborhood, that you'd like to be aware of it. But I'm not opposed to the project at all. I just don't want people question me why I'm approving something when it hasn't been brought to their attention. And it's happened before, so I can tell you about that.
Yeah, and that was a much
There's a segue to that. There's a segue to what Henry was saying. You're not just adding capacity for 2 people. You're actually doing construction somewhere down the road by adding a 10 by 24 by 5, whatever that is, room that you're going to, that proposed room. So as soon as people see that construction going up, what's going to happen is exactly what Henry is saying. Is the permit, was it okay, what's going in there? Those are the kind of things. So it's not just adding 2 people, you're also going to add a structure to your site plan. And those kind of issues that Henry's talking about will definitely come up, I have no doubt.
Well, I can.
Go ahead.
What I would
I have
say.
a question for Bob.
Yeah, what I would say is that zoning codes draw that delicate line between personal private or property rights and free use of your own property and the common good of the public. So, you know, there are just different levels of different projects that require different levels of approval. This one does not require the entire neighborhood to sign off on it. This one requires that, because it's already approved and that this is an approved use with a conditional use permit in that neighborhood. So all it requires is a review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, not necessarily approval of the entire neighborhood. And that's, those rules are, again, they draw that line between personal private property rights and the right of the public to regulate itself for its own safety. But in this case, it's not required.
Conditional use permit.
Yes. And it is one of these.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Hello?
Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, I have a general question. Isn't there a legal requirement, when any change like this comes in? Aren't residents within 200 feet required to be notified?
Not for
That's not in our ordinance up here?
not for conditional use permit. It is required for a zoning change or a general plan amendment or for any serious change. But
There's no requirement legally notify adjacent property owners or within 200 feet.
Our single-family residential zone, R1-5, in our zoning, town zoning code book, it specifically says that assisted living homes are allowed in the single residential zone. That's why she doesn't have to make an announcement to her neighborhood. If she, for example, decides to add a room or make this, instead of the single family residential zone, to make it assisted living home. Well, we have all over town right now is a reconstruction, rebuilding, they're adding houses. They don't come and don't make announcements to all the neighborhood. It's just a single family residence. She's not doing something exquisite or something out of the law. She's only asking to add 2 people to make her assisted living home profitable, somewhat profitable.
No, I understand that, and I think it's definitely, it's going to fill a great gap up here. I have no problem with that. I was just curious because, typically adjacent or nearby homeowners are just automatically notified. It's not a limitation to, come and complain about it, but it's to let them know. So the newspaper announcement then was the notification to neighbors.
Yeah, and
legal announcement. Yeah.
It's not just about the 2 people. We're actually doing it in addition to the building too. So it's 2 people plus the additional expansion of the existing building.
The addition isn't within the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's a building permit issue. This is just about this conditional use permit.
It's just adding 2 more people. Instead of 6, you want 8.
That's it.
And again, if there was a zoning change, if they were rezoning this property to higher density residential or commercial or something like that, yes, it would require notification. But this is an allowed use within that zoning district. This is not a special use that's requiring a change of the code.
So, are there any more questions?
Yeah, one minor question about our typical bugaboo on parking. There's 1 handicapped and 2 compact spaces. What kind of staffing are we looking at here? I mean, around the clock?
Typically in assisted living of this size, you have 1 person. You have one.
Oh, okay. All right. So parking should not be a problem.
Yeah, and obviously, Sherry, that depends on the level of care. If I had some residents that advanced to a higher level of care, then I might try to have 2, in certain morning hours where it's kind of hectic. But I've worked these facilities off and on the past 22 years, and you generally don't have a lot of traffic in and out. But you do have people visiting. You do have home health aides coming in, physical therapy coming in, situations like that. But there's typically not a whole lot.
Okay. And
and,
I tend not to stay all day, I would assume. Okay.
Mr.
All right,
Chilton-
thank you, Tiffany. Good luck with this. It's a great project.
Mr. Chilton's been trying to address the commission for a while now, so let's let him have his turn at the mic.
Yeah, this was very good question. Speaking about the parking, we're not defining the parking lot, but this is all the minimum requirements are fulfilled on the plan. Minimum required 2 regular parking lots and 1 handicap, so it's all shown.
Okay.
Well, I thank Sue Anderson for taking at least $100,000 loss on the sale of her property as a gift to the town, I guess. Everybody that knows these assisted living facilities knows that this is going to be the lowest level of care, not an intermediate level of care or a high quality of care. It's going to be the lowest level to have 1 person. You can't have 8 people and have a higher required standard of care. So you have to think about that. This is the lowest level. People buy these houses, put these up, go to Barrett Jackson and buy their $100,000 car. But I can assure you, if Sue Anderson or anyone else would have asked the neighborhood, I live 4 houses away, they would have all said no. Because you can't control 8 people with 1 person. If you've been around assisted living places like this, you know that the residents get out, they hobble around, make all kinds of noise, and disturb all kinds of neighbors, and you're increasing this from 6 to 8. The house sits on, it has 1,158 square feet. Now that's going to be increased?
Yes.
How much?
250. Yeah, I'll show you that.
250 feet more? So you're going to increase it to 1,400 square feet. My father lived in an assisted living house, 5 people, 3,500 square feet. His bedroom was the minimum I would consider proper for a home. You're going to put 2 people in a small bedroom. You want to increase 6 to 8 so they can add $4,000 a month to their bottom line. But you haven't considered the living quality. They're going to have no parking for residents. Where are they going to park? There's no parking there now. Sue knows that. I know that. I live there. I look down on it out of my windows. There's no parking there. You can't park on Moffett. You couldn't turn the corner. So I don't know who owns the little bitty triangle in front of the house. Who owns the little bitty triangle?
That's for the
So you own all the way both to Crow Street and to Moffett? That whole triangle? Okay.
Mister, do you have a plan here? This is the parking lot, 2 parking lots, and this is the handicap parking.
Okay.
That's a driveway, and that's all her property.
Oh, okay, that's what I have.
This is called all property. And this can be regraded. The existing house is actually 1,600 square foot plus 250 square feet.
Realtors are telling us in Arizona, because we called today, and we were told by realtors it's 1,558 square feet. How much is the house right now?
Existing is 1,600 square feet. So
That's not what the county says. The county doesn't say it's 16.
Pinell County, I got the information from
Did you
Pinell.
show it to me too?
I don't have the Pinell County information, but I have, this
No, you
is
have one.
right there. It's from the Pinell County GIS website.
On the site plan, it says 1,295 feet on the site plan.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, something's wrong. It says it right here.
I'm sorry.
Existing building is 1,295 square feet.
Sorry, the total will be 1,600.
Okay. That's a little different, isn't it?
Well,
A substantial difference.
Yeah, and that definitely, that's, again, and definitely, I don't want to cut you off, so please do continue. And this is the most important question in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission is whether or not they feel that the site supports 6 to 8. So I don't want us to interrupt Mr. Chilton, so let's let him go ahead and talk.
Well, then you need to consider the size that people need to live in comfortably, especially when you're older like I am. You're going to confine them to a twin bed and say you're going to live in this twin bed all day? Where are they going to sit in the living room with 8 people in the living room and one caregiver? Isn't going to fit. You have to have a dining room that sits at least 8 people plus a cook or someone, so now you're at 9. You want to invite a relative over, now you're at 10 or 12. And I'm sure that this house won't allow a dining room of that size, does it? How big is the dining room going to be?
Currently, it's very small, but I'm sorry, let me speak to the mic there.
No.
So currently, the dining room is very small, and we haven't got to the as-built plan yet. But part of the reasoning to adding on that bedroom, because I technically don't need it for 6 beds, but I want to take out a wall of a current bedroom to allow a large dining room and activity area. So that's part of the reason why I want to add the addition later on to be able to have a larger dining space.
How big is the dining space today?
I don't have that right off my head. It's not very large.
It's not very large, but they're asking to put 8 people in it.
No, I'm going to take out a wall that'll open a bedroom that'll allow a larger dining room. I will not do it the way that
We
it
will do
is.
the remodel.
I'm asking you how large. That's a reasonable question. You come to the city, you ask them to approve a change, you should have the information that allows them to make an informed, intelligent decision.
I understand what you're saying.
He's disrespectful.
I see it as the state of Arizona governs the square footage, so I didn't think that information would be necessary for the local plan.
I think that I want to make sure that Mr. Chilton has his right to say his viewpoint, but we shouldn't. I don't want us to get in an argument here. We all respect each other's. We all respect each other's opinions. So
Absolutely.
You'll have a chance to speak, and then you'll have a chance to respond to that. Okay? Thank you.
Look at the care that people are going to get. Look how you want them to live. Now I know we need assisted living in Superior, but you have to provide a minimum quality of care. Ask yourself, how would you like to be treated if you were one of the 8 in this small house where you can't have your family over, 1 or 2 people over for dinner, you can't park your car, you have to live on your twin bed because there isn't enough room to have 8 people, especially in today's COVID requirements. You couldn't sit them. You couldn't sit 8 people in their living room or their dining room. So think about that. Think of the quality of the care that has to be provided to people. And let people grow old with dignity.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chilton. In the interest of fairness, you want to address some of those issues raised?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I think it might be important for you all to read the letters, and I'd be happy to hand them to you. There are some personal letters of character on my part of families that I've cared for, and I will tell you absolutely point blank that I will never operate assisted living that gives substandard care. The reason why I'm not going for 10 beds, because according to the state, I can make 10 beds out of this. But I have said there's not enough room for 10. The state will license me for 10 because they have a minimum square footage, period. And that's what you go by. But I didn't feel comfortable, okay? As far as 1 caregiver per shift, it is my responsibility as owner of the home to ensure that my staff can handle the care of the residents that is there. So can I give you an example? Let's say I have 2 people of a high level of care, and I have a 3rd family coming and saying, this is my family's needs. I have to ensure that my staff can meet those needs. If they can't, I don't accept that resident. Okay, that's just the way I will operate. That's the way the state would require me to operate. Okay? Again, the reason for the addition is because it doesn't have a big dining room. Okay? As it is. So my thought process was, let's tear out a wall, let's extend, make a large dining room and a nice activity area to where we can have a large table or 2 large round tables, however we're going to set that up, and then add the bedroom off to the side. Okay, that is part of the reasoning for doing that, so we do have more livable space.
Can I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question? Are these people going to be able to get up and move around, or are they going to be bedridden?
There's 3 different levels of care. Okay, in all of my experience with assisted living, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 that own a car. Most people don't pay to go into an assisted living if they're driving, getting out and around. Yeah. Okay, so there's supervisory level of care to where we basically supervise, remind them, we pass their meds, we cook their food, and we kind of remind them about what we call activities of daily living. Okay, then there's personal level of care where we start to be more hands-on. Maybe a reminder, put the toothbrush in their hand, a little more personal, hands-on care. And then there's directed care. And directed care are the folks that Mr. Chilton referred to that perhaps try to go home. Okay, they do try to escape the property. That's one reason the state has particular requirements on the boundaries of the home with lock gates and coded doors and coded gates. I don't have to accept directed care. And
well, what I was asking is like, are you going to have people, you're asking, for 8 beds, yes. I understand that. But are they going to be bedridden? Or are you going to take any that are bedridden?
Okay, again, it depends.
How do you care for them?
It depends on the nature of the home, okay? So, if I'm not going to have a house full of bedridden because we couldn't care for them properly, okay? But most people, when you say bedridden, generally, in my experience, they're not, it's usually a hospice type situation. I don't know if I've ever cared with somebody that I don't want to use the word allowed because I believe the residents have a choice, but I don't believe I've ever cared for somebody that just stayed in bed all day because we didn't want to get them up. That's not how it works.
No,
so,
I didn't mean
yes,
that.
I would accept somebody who does not have the capability of getting up. But as in my experience, we would use Hoyers to get them up. We would do a 2-person lift if we had to.
But you're only going to have 1 person in there for assistant.
Depending on the level of care. Okay? If I have Ms. Smith come to me and she's a supervisory level of care, and then she progresses to personal, and then she progresses to directed. I and the fire marshal has had discussions about this. I do not believe that person should go find another home because they need more care. Okay? So I would care for them, absolutely. I have experience in caring for people in all sorts of conditions, all sorts of diseases. So I am comfortable with caring for that. But if it comes to the point where my staff can't handle it, then I'm probably going to only accept, I shouldn't say can't, but the next person I accept would probably only be a supervisory care. And you start saying you balance it out. I can't have 8 beds of directed care with 1 caregiver. You are absolutely correct. That would not be ethical.
That's what I was asking.
That would not be ethical. So typically, unless you work in a memory care of a nursing home, you don't have 10 or 8 people with directed care. Okay? I don't think I've ever seen that in assisted living. So again, unless, I've worked lockdown, they call them memory cares now in nursing homes. I've worked as a CNA in those homes. And to be quite frank with you, most nights I had 20 patients to just me. Okay, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying nursing homes are far less staff to patient ratio than assisted livings are. Okay? So I cannot tell you, ma'am, exactly who is going to be living in the home, because I can tell you, okay, I'll only accept 5 supervisory and then maybe 3 directed, but with time those needs change. So it would be
they
Not
get
even a good
worse as
idea
they
for me
go
to try to
on.
answer that question, because I really
Yeah,
don't know.
well, I just wondered how many caregivers you were gonna have if you had 8 people there,
Hello?
and they get slowly
Hello?
worse. You're
If,
gonna need
if I
more.
had 8 people that were a higher level of care, I absolutely would have to have more than one caregiver.
I'm sorry, you're all still
Let's come
on.
back on.
Yeah, somebody
Yeah,
hit
okay.
the red button on the mute there. Oh.
No,
Somebody-
mine went away too, yeah, I'm back.
They accidentally muted my line, I apologize.
So, Joy, ma'am, just so you know, the state does inspections of our homes every year. They're called surveys. You could go on the Arizona Department of Health. It's like looking up a restaurant's, ratings. You can go onto that website and you can see the surveys of assisted living homes, okay? And so, if the state comes and they see that I'm being cheap and I only want one caregiver, but I have this high level of care, I mean, they can shut me down in a heartbeat. Not only that, I feel it's unethical.
Yeah.
So outside, I mean, like I said, I could ask for 10 beds. Okay, it's not about me making a bunch of money. I don't know anybody that owns one assisted living that buys expensive cars. You can do the math yourself. Okay? I told you what all tax pays. You can run the numbers. And you don't get rich off of these, you make a good living. And I do what I do because I like to do what I do. I enjoy it. And I feel that I do a very good job at it. And these letters might help, explain these are family members that I've cared for in the past. And maybe that would help relieve that. I have to go to sleep at the end of the day, and I have to stand before God one day. And I will not ever give somebody inadequate care for $1.
Well, this is me, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I have not sent a letter to Tiffany from first-hand experience with her. She did care for my mother when she was here in town, and I would give her, if there was an A, I would give her an A++. But just like I said earlier, my decision is not based on a business model because Tiffany, I have no doubt that Tiffany and her team provides care. But listening to what Jerry was saying, and I think about when you have an operation like that, one of the things in the zoning, maybe not here, but it says in the zoning, I know you have parking, but with the number of people you have, your staff, you have 3 spots. No one's going to park in that handicap unless they're handicapped. So you really only have 2 available spaces. What I'm saying on some other code in our zoning is that you have a license to operate within the residential area, but the people that come to your business location cannot just park on the street during business hours. And so, and I'm kind of leaning towards what Jerry's saying, not only from, not necessarily from the level of care with the amount of square footage, that is concerning. But I'm looking at where you're going to have overflow parking, it's going to be along Moffett, or it's going to be along First Street. And those are really small streets already, so, that's where I'm coming from. We're trying to put a round peg in a square hole. We need the facility, but this may not be the location to expand something like that.
Just for your
Okay, comment?
Just for your information, this is Lana Clark. I received 18 letters from Tiffany, the neighborhoods, the citizens of Town of Superior. They wrote letters in support of her assisted living. I'm gonna email that tomorrow to Ruby, and she's gonna pass it over to you.
Well, I personally don't either, because my decision is not based on letters, it's based on the functionality of the site.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when you're talking about the proposed living there, give or take, if you have grandkids or kids coming to visit, and I know Moss is pretty good, probably not as good as Hank does because he lives in that area, but that street's not that big. The only alternative they have to do is is park out on the street. So if you're having a holiday or weekend where people are coming to visit their grandma, their grandfather, and say this person has 2 or 3 kids, and they all show up, grown-up adult kids, and they're going to be parking on that street. You're basically creating a hazard on the street itself. And just what Hank says, a great idea, but maybe this isn't the best location.
I understand your point.
That's why it's important to let the people in the neighborhood. I mean, she probably gives a good level of care to her patients and all that, but somebody on Canal writing a letter of recommendation for something that's taking place on Moffett Street, that's apples and oranges. That doesn't pertain to the person that live on Moffett Street. That's where our concern is. Kids get run over with excess traffic on that street. Darting out in front of a car, then we really have a hazard there.
No, I agree,
Well,
and I have oftentimes tried to come up Moffett while the family down at the end of Moffett and Stone are having a large party, and I couldn't. I had to go all the way around the block, so I totally understand what you're saying. I think what I would encourage in the event, because these are people's homes, and we will encourage visitors, and we will have parties, and we will have events, I'm not going to say we won't, but I would encourage them to park along Crow, which is a dead-end street. There is one resident to the north of Crow that's currently living there. Then there's an abandoned house, and then there's a family that's building a house where that house was burned there. So that's what would my recommendation be along that side. We can look at the plot. I mean, obviously, we're putting 2 designated parking spaces. There are room for other cars. We just, in the plot plan, put the 2 designated, which was the minimum requirements for the code. So I think the question would be, if I have 6 beds there, which I do not need a conditional use permit for, we're still going to have parties, we're still going to have celebrations, we're still going to have events. And obviously don't make enemies with my neighbors. Okay, so I would do everything possible. I even looked at a little plot of land around there that looks vacant, trying to think, well, maybe I should try to find the owner of that and make that into a overflow parking space. So that's just some ideas there to address that. And keep in mind, there are more spaces for cars. We just didn't draw them up in the plot plan.
There are a lot of people in the audience that have waited a while. Does anyone else want to come to the podium and speak on the issue, or are you just interested in listening? Or it's a public hearing, so anyone who wishes to address the Planning and Zoning Commission can. No? Okay. Oh, okay.
This is Sue Anderson. Oh, that's not the speaker, is it? Is this the little thing?
It's both of them.
This is Sue Anderson, and I would just like to say, I'm sitting here listening. I've obviously been very involved in this with Tiffany, and hope that you will consider doing this. If you look around town, there are not very many properties that meet every single condition that everybody's talking about. We have old houses, we have funky shaped lots, we have all kinds of things. The true boundary on that property, when Bill and I bought that property, we had it surveyed, and the south line of the property is in the middle of Moffett. Okay, so and that's all over town. You can look at the maps at any time and find those kinds of things. But I think we really got off track here. The question is, she can have 6 beds already. That's an approved condition. All she's asking for is to add 2 beds so she can make a profit instead of working all these hours and putting literally hundreds of thousands of dollars into a facility and not making any money, which nobody in their right mind would do. We need it desperately, and there aren't that many properties in this town that will accommodate it perfectly. Thank you.
Can I just make one more point? I'm sorry, I know you guys are getting tired. One of the things that, when Sue first asked me to take a look at this house, I told her no. Doesn't have curb appeal, there's not enough space, and then she hired me to paint it and do some little odds, and I'm in there. This house has a handicap bathroom. I don't have to have a handicap bathroom, but it's a wise decision. It makes it comfortable for the resident, it makes it comfortable for the caregiver. It also has an additional bathroom, and it has the 4 bedrooms, which one I want to use to enlarge the dining room, activity area, and then add on an additional. So I understand what you're saying. It wasn't like I didn't jump on it. I had to be in the house a while and say, well, wait a minute, we can move that wall and make this bigger, and we could do this and this to try to make it as comfortable as possible. But the handicap bathroom is a plus. I've been in a lot of homes in Superior. I haven't seen one. So that was a big selling point for that.
Well, you know, the comment about the lot configurations throughout our town is very understandable because I kind of call them wildcat lots and the way they were structured way in the early 1900s or late 1900s, whatever it was, and I understand that. But you know, when you look at it from a commercial operation, if the lot's not big enough, you know, and you're trying to put a round peg in a square hole, then you look into buying adjacent property to maybe to circumvent some of the concerns, even from Jerry, who lives in the neighborhood. So yeah, you're right. The lots are kind of cattywampus, but because you know, I think in the future, when people are real serious about building here, they're going to buy adjacent lots. There may be a house on my house property the same way. There's 3 lots. Two of the lots have houses, the other don't. But you can't really build a house on any one of those 3 because they're too small. You'd have to combine lots to do that. So I think that premise kind of applies even here. You know, yeah, that's the case. But when you're serious about doing stuff, sometimes you have to make that leap and combine a lot. Whether this applies here or not, maybe not. But going forward with others, I kind of see that's what's going to happen in our community because just for that fact, the way these lots are configured, especially when we get into building single-family homes that have 3 or 4 kids. So that's fun. I kind of look at the future when I kind of look at this stuff. So yeah, I agree with the cattywampus structure of these lots, but sometimes you have to combine 2 lots to get what you need to either operate a business or even to build a home.
Pam, do you want to?
Okay, I personally don't, she's adding off enough square footage, I believe, to take care of 2 additional people. My father-in-law was in 2 assisted livings in the valley. And you guys are talking about parking. Everybody parked on the street. They didn't have parking for all the visitors. Never. One of them, I think, was around 1,800 square feet, and there was 10 to 12 people in that home, I believe. Although I never saw everybody out at one time. There was usually 4 or 5 in the living room, a couple of people out on the back patio, and the rest of them were in their room. I think it's workable. Maybe it's not, maybe it would be nice to have more square footage, but I think it's workable. I would have rather had my husband's father in town with less square footage so that we could see him daily rather than, and I have to, it would just be so wonderful to have something like this in town.
Can I just make one more comment? Sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hank brought up a valid point, and I think, Hank, when you mentioned commercial, to me, the way I've always viewed assisted living is it's these people's home. Yeah. It's not a store. It is their home. They have the same rights and privileges in that home than they do in their own home. So to me, I don't see it as a commercial building. I see it as, okay, my home, I have 5 kids and me, and we all can live in my home comfortably. Okay? 6 people are going to be residing and receiving mail in that home. And then there'll be staff, and yes, I hope there's visitors. I hope there's family coming in and out all the time. So I guess I don't see it as a commercial project. I see it as providing a home for people who will receive quality care when they need it.
And I speak again because it just keeps allowing her to keep talking to
Sure,
talk.
sure, you absolutely can speak again. Mr. Hain came up first, so let's let him address this.
Yeah, this is Michael Hain. I support Tiffany's project here. You know, currently, like I said, the zoning is already set up for her to have 6 people because that's how the zoning was constructed. And I understand, you know, that's a pretty tight area, but you know, that's what Superior is. It's not patterned like Fountain Hills. So we have to make like concessions or to move forward in progress. I mean, maybe the next home you won't approve, okay? But I think, you know, everybody knows Tiffany and her care and how important something like this, assisted living home, is to our community. And I think we just got to encourage people to take this step to move forward. She's just asking, like I said, just to add 2 new people to the residents there. But I just like to encourage that that we need something like this, and somebody's willing to do that. And the thing is, the community is not perfectly laid out, and that's why this is what makes Superior very unique. But also, we have to also not just confine to the lines or set in rules, because that's why she's approached you for a conditional use permit. That's the flexibility we have for our community. Like I said, you may approve this, the next one you may not approve, because you might say, oh, it didn't work out. But I really believe, because we need to keep moving ahead, especially in this area with the elderly, to provide something for our community, this, you know, for an event to go out, because to say, wow, we have an assisted living home here, it could set up for future, because our community is not getting any younger. Sure, there's a lot of development, there's a lot of people who want to move to our town, but in a sense, there's a lot of families here that have a lot of elderly that don't want to ship their elderly away. They want to keep them here in our community. So, you know, I totally support her endeavor here.
Right, Mr. Kilby?
I especially like the comment that Madam Dalton made, that she would visit her father-in-law every day if he was here. You ought to go drive Moffett and drive Crow and look at the size of the streets and how they're configured. There are 2 curves on Moffett, not 1, 2. Come around, if you're going east, you go to the left, you turn to the right. It's very narrow, but not down at Southwest Corner House. They knocked down the gas line to that house. And if you go there now, you'll see there are metal posts in the street so that people will stop knocking the gas meter over. There just isn't any room for that much parking, and we know how Superior families, or at least what I've seen for 76 years, is that people have large gatherings, which I'm all in favor of, but you can't have them at that facility. There isn't any parking for that many people, unless you limit the residents having family over. That's nice to say, well, I'll go find a place, but there isn't a place that I know of. There's a couple of houses that could be bought probably on the south side of Moffett, west of this, if they wanted to spend the money to buy a place for parking. But you can't park on that street. There's not enough. You couldn't get fire trucks around there. If there was parking, cars were parked on the corner of Moffett. So you better think about that with your fire marshal and the town for that parking.
And I would like to bring Svetlana Clark up. Thank you, Mr. Chilton. and ask the fire marshal if they've addressed the parking issue. Per code, parking and traffic are one of the issues that the Planning and Zoning Commission does have to consider before approving the CUP. So we want to find out if that's been addressed by staff.
Fire marshal, he's done the investigation. He was on the lot. He was on the property. He approved the site plan with all those requirements. He approved this site plan, this site plan. He approved it.
Does it have sufficient parking according to the code is the question.
The Crow Street is very wide. That's where you can park the fire truck. And she's right about parking on the Crow Street.
Okay.
But the minimum requires the 2 in the handicap.
Yes, it's for minimum requirements, 2 compact parking spaces and 1 handicap. Those are minimum requirements.
Is the fire marshal still on? Mr. Lane, he's still on?
I don't think so.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, can you address the parking and traffic issue for us?
Yes, I understand the comments concerning the narrow street and the curve into the triangle. That's the reality of the situation we have. But with what we asked for, when I met with Tiffany and we did the inspection down there, with access to all 4 sides of the building, with gates to the fence and access to the front of the house, and parking and fire engine on either one of the streets, Moth or Crow, we have adequate access to the building. So, from a lifestyle standpoint, whether that suits the neighbors or the visiting family or whatever, is really outside our scope. But from an emergency operation standpoint, we would have room to operate there if the fences and the gates were arranged the way we asked for, and with the access to all 4 sides of the building.
This is Hank. Mr. Fire Marshal, you probably haven't been down on High Street on Highland during the weekend when all the families are here and there's cars parked on both sides. You can't get a fire truck down the road. You'd have to push them out of the way. And Moffett is probably a little, I'm not really concerned about it. You could probably pull a fire truck up if there's nobody parked on the street. But the worst case scenario, if you have a gathering and you have 12 other cars, 6 on each side, or maybe parallel parking to each other or double parking, you're not going to get in. I mean, I'm not looking at the actual parking requirement for the residents or what's on the site plan. I'm more concerned, just like what Jerry was saying about when residents show up, visitors show up, they're definitely going to park on Moffett, and they're definitely going to park on Crow Street. And if there's enough of them there, even half of the 4, that you get 2 people, it's additional 8 cars, 6 to 8 cars. You're going to have a challenge getting a fire truck in there. I mean, if nobody's on the street, no problem. But if people are parking on the street, big problem.
We can say
Yeah, this is Dallas again, and I certainly agree with the reality of that. Like a number of folks have said, that's a common situation throughout the town because it's a historic town, and it was laid out many years ago before community planning standards existed, and so we have those kinds of situations existing all over town. And if we could start over, then some of those things wouldn't be there. And I agree. If it was a holiday weekend and a worst case scenario and there was 8 residents in the house and all their families were there visiting and we had cars parked on both sides of Moffett and Crow, you'd be hard pressed to get a vehicle down the street. I understand that reality.
I want to, just for the record, hold a second, just for the record, Hank, I just want to make sure we aren't having side conversations because this is a public meeting and there is a public record, so we want to make sure everybody is getting their time to talk and we're not talking over each other and we're not having side conversations, okay? Thank you very much. That's just, so we don't get in trouble with the state for not following the rules. So I believe Hank, you were speaking, and then Pam is waiting at the podium to speak after you.
Well, along those lines, with the fire chief, somebody made a comment about what happens on Stone and Moffett, which is a resident. That's a resident. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that, because I have the same problem on my street. But we're talking about an operation here with care facility, so it's not really an apples to apples. And I'd like to kind of put them in parallel to each other. I feel as a commissioner of the planning and zoning, I have to take that kind of emotion out of it when I'm making a decision, something like this. So you can't compare what happens on a resident on Stone and Moffett as opposed to Crow and Moffett with this particular project.
Okay, Pam, go ahead.
Okay, you have a residence. It is a residence. You have 4 bedrooms, which I do property management, and I really can't turn away people. If I have a 4-bedroom, I can't turn away a family of 8 people. I just can't do it. Because you're allowed to have 2 people per bedroom. And those bedrooms, one's a little small, but the other 2, you can get 2 beds in them. I don't know if that's what you're doing.
Well, the state says that same.
But the bedrooms that my father-in-law were in were very tiny, very tiny. You could get a twin bed. You had to hang the TV at the end of the twin bed, and then there was a small table, side table, and then there was room for a chair, couple chairs, and that's it. As far as parking, several times we've had to park a couple houses up and walk to the house that he was staying in. Stone Avenue's not that far away. It might be 100 feet away. I could park on Stone and walk to visit. I just think we need to work. We need to be a village. We need to take care of our people. And it would be just so wonderful to have a place. We need more than one, actually. Let's try it. Come on.
Does anyone else want to address the board?
I got a question for you, Tom. Tom, it seems like the Moffett Street is kind of restricted. What would it take to make Moffett Street a one-way to relieve the pressure of two-way driving? It seems like, it would be an easy fix. So you would have all the traffic on Moffett.
That's something we could we could do out as a travel plan. Lana would have to prepare a plan and determine whether or not that was viable. I don't know all the regulations that determine whether we can do that.
Stone down on Moffett and go up Log and then use East Street to get back to Stone.
That would be as far as safety concerns, that would relieve a lot of the safety concerns of two-way.
Down Moffett to Log and then from Log up to E back over
and then
to
Kroll.
Stone.
Kroll's a dead end, right?
Yes.
It's a dead end, so.
We would have to determine whether, that would probably be a public process. You'd have to determine whether the neighbors supported that. So I don't know that we could
Not that many
do it
neighbors
ourselves.
on East Street.
Generally, that sort of thing, like for instance, you want to put a speed hump, you have to have a petition of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And to do it. So I think it's I wouldn't say it's impossible. I just think we'd have to do our research and do it right.
I think that would relieve a lot of the pressure. I think that even the fire department would have a better access to the property without having to fight two-way traffic. And I'm in support of the project because it's needed here.
Yeah.
And I have my mom in an assisted home.
To put the signs it's very easy. Just buy them and put the signs, but we have to go through the process and we have to do the study. Then we will have to teach the whole neighborhood to show that this is a one-way street, not a three-way street.
It just takes signs at the beginning.
It sounds easy.
That's all I got.
I mean,
But it's a good project.
so make a vote.
If the last call for discussion.
Is there anybody else that wants to say anything? Okay.
No, I'd just like to add one more thing here. I think there is no argument whatsoever. We all know Tiffany and her reputation, and there is a need for this. But I'm really pleased to just hear that comment about the one-way street. Because what we need here is some creative thinking. We've got to have room for staff. We've got to have some safe place so people are not going to get hit by a giant pickup truck when they walk over to see mom. And your mind tends to be other places. But anyway, I think some creative thinking here to find some traffic, some way to find a couple more parking spaces there. And Tiffany mentioned that there was an empty property. Perhaps you could pursue that. But I think, there's a little bit of creativity we can work with that. Definitely a need for it, and she's a good person to run this. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay. We're gonna have, okay, this was open for public hearing, discussion, possible approval, so we're gonna have a vote.
We have to have a motion.
Oh, somebody make a motion for the conditional use permit requested from Tiffany Road to allow 8 residents for assisted living.
I make a motion to go with this project.
Okay, Jesse made the motion. Do I hear a second? Can I second it?
Yes.
Okay, I second it, Joy Evelyn, for the motion. So this
Do we have
is,
a discussion on this?
You gotta
we
have
just,
you gotta have a vote, right?
Well, whichever motion, he can ask for discussion after the motion, yes.
okay, go ahead, Hank. There's been a motion
first
by
of all,
Jesse and approved by Joy.
First of all, I do agree that we do need a facility like this. And I understand that there's a lot of people who support this, and I totally, 100% support Tiffany and her caregiving. But I'm going to vote no for this because I feel it infringes on other elements of parking requirements for any facility. I have the same restrictions on my side. I'm not allowed to have, if I have people working out of my home, I can't have them be parking on the street because it takes up the parking area for residents. I'm also concerned about the access of fire trucks and what have you. And whether this passes or not, my conscience tells me that I want this, but from a practical matter of being part of the commission, is that I can't support this. So my vote, when we get to the vote, is going to be no.
Okay, well, we're gonna take account. Okay, Matt's not here, I vote yea. Henry Munoz?
I'm gonna vote no, and basically I just wanna follow up on what Hank said. I see a lack of community involvement in this project. I'm not against the project by any means, but just the size of the street, you're closing off 5 feet of that street, basically a safety factor.
We're not
I think the residents in the area should be well aware of what's happening in their neighborhoods, so at least they have a voice in what's occurring in their neighborhoods. It might pertain to their grandkids, their kids, who knows, I'm all for the project, but from what I see here, everything's being rushed. There's a lot of homework left on this project. I mean, something's gonna happen and the town's gonna pay the price for not doing their due diligence. So I'm just following Hank's footprint, and that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this, so I'm gonna have to vote no on this until we get this homework completed that needs to be done.
Sherry, Victoria?
Can we delay this vote until there is at least a preliminary feasibility study of this one-way traffic proposal for Moffett?
There has been a vote, there has been a motion, and it's on the vote. The proffer of the motion could withdraw it, and you could propose another motion to table it. But that's what the process would be in order to move forward. There is a motion, it is being voted upon. The only way for that to change is for the person that proffered the motion to withdraw it, and then we have a vote. You can, after that, if the vote is negative or positive, you can make another motion to amend it later.
Okay, Sherry, so how are you going to vote?
I'm going to have to vote no on this. I hate to do it, but I really want to see some proposals to alleviate the parking and travel pressure in the neighborhood.
David? Gunn? He's not here. Jesse?
I vote aye.
Okay.
And I want to make a comment about due process to the public.
Okay.
I can see a public notice here issued in the Superior Sun, went on in the community, and if they had any suggestions, any regards to this project, they would be here to answer to this public notice. So I vote aye.
Okay, there are 3 noes and 2 ayes. So, it didn't pass.
You haven't asked for my vote.
Yes, I did. You said no. Hank?
No, that was in comments. That was in discussion.
Okay, Hank Gutierrez, how do you vote?
No.
Okay. So it's still 3 noes and 2 ayes. So, this didn't pass this time, but that doesn't mean we can't bring it up again.
So I request the motion, so we have planning and zoning direction you're directing staff to come back with a plan to discuss one-way traffic on that road. Is that the direction I have received? Can we put that into a motion?
Yes, I think so. To see if at least that idea is feasible, and we can revisit this. I'd like to see no prejudice attached to this denial of the vote.
Okay.
We can just revisit.
Then we need to make a motion. We need to make a motion to make a one-way street either from Stone over to Law or
no, we can't do
it's
that.
on the agenda. You can
look into the feasibility of that from our traffic people.
What you could do is vote to table this and ask for it brought back. That's all you could do a motion to table this.
Okay. Yeah. We can vote to table it right now and bring it back after a study.
Or you can just that would take a motion and a vote, or you can just let the meeting stand.
We're getting out of order here.
Yeah, that's out of order. Mr. Parry, you can't table it after the vote is
Okay, just a minute, you guys, let Todd speak.
And the motion to deny it's already been done. If the Planning and Zoning Commission can send me, the only other way that functions if you want it brought back is if you, up to 3 commissioners send me an email saying they would like to see this returned to the agenda under some form, one way or something like that. But I can't really act on a feasibility study or anything else without it being placed on the agenda by someone. So 3 planning and zoning commissioners could decide to place it on the agenda, or it could be resubmitted with that stipulation by the applicant. But they're probably right. I can't ask for a motion on that right now.
So Tiffany can reapply?
Yes.
Okay, then do it, Tiffany.
I would like to assume my table and revisit it, but we didn't do that.
Well.
Yeah, the only way that would have worked is if the person who made the motion before the vote withdrew their motion. This has been I would like to thank everyone for surviving through this long meeting. This is small town government at work, where we discuss these things and work them out and listen to everybody and let them all have their say. it can be a little tiring, and I apologize for everybody's getting a little foggy at this point in the night. But as of this point, we have, it has been rejected. That isn't to say that it can't be brought back. That is up to the applicant, and nothing we're going to decide right now.
Is the application been denied or rejected? Because if it's been
Then
denied,
it's voted 3 noes and 2 ayes.
It's been denied.
It was denied.
so she cannot apply for a period of 1 year
Okay.
to come back to this.
Okay.
The chair,
Yes? What?
can I make a motion to adjourn?
Okay. Wait, one second. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Joy, I may have missed this. Did we vote on the minutes?
Yeah.
With the motion and a second, but was there a vote?
Yeah, there was. And it
Back
passed.
in the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I think you voted yes.
All right. All right, I'm losing it then. I did not remember voting. Okay.
It's been a long night for all of us.
No, you did vote, Sherry. I got it written
That
down.
that was in the beginning of it, though.
Yeah.
All
I got
right,
it right
sorry.
here.
Okay.
You did. I got it right.
Okay. That's good.
Okay, so,
A motion to adjourn if there's no other business.
I'll second.
okay, there's a motion made by Hank and seconded by Sherry to adjourn. We'll meet again in May, or no, yeah, May.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know the date, but I know it's in May.
First Thursday.
First
in
Thursday
May.
of May.
First Thursday in May. Thank you guys for all participating.
May 6th.
It'll be May
Thank
6th.
you, good night.
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 Tom, wait. Look, okay.
So